What's going on, everybody? I am here to do a review for the movie Imaginary. Imaginary is the latest movie released by Blumhouse, starring DeWanda Wise, who plays a woman by the name of Jessica, who is newly married to this man who has two daughters. And basically she's a creator, she's a painter, she's an author, she's an artist, and everything seemingly is going well for her. It's a little bit of an adjustment that she has to make, being a new stepmother and a new wife to this family that basically was getting over a situation that involved the former wife of the man that she married. And basically what happens is that this woman ends up, moving back into her childhood home, to try to basically start a whole new life with her brand new family. And then things start to go a little crazy or a little bit weird when the youngest daughter, whose name is Alice, ends up finding this teddy bear down in the basement behind this wall, and he ends up becoming her imaginary friend by the name of Chauncey. And now a lot of weird things start to occur. Things are starting to happen. Alice starts to gain pretty much a bond with this bear, especially since she acted a little bit reclusive, a little more secluded away from everything. She wasn't really outgoing in that aspect, but now that she has this imaginary friend by the name of Chauncey in the form of this bear, this stuffed animal bear, she now feels like she's gained a friend. But of course, it wouldn't be in Blumhouse fashion to say that that would be the gist of the movie, because it wouldn't be. Because this bear by the name of Chauncey is far from what it seems. The bear is just a cover for what Chauncey actually truly is, which is basically an entity from, I guess you could say, a beyond type of world that is not of Earth, that was pretty much discovered by Jessica when she was a little girl. And now Chauncey is upset because she feels that he got abandoned by Jessica when she was a child, and now the way to get Jessica back is to now try to take hold of Alice, while also baiting Jessica to come back into that world, because it's almost like one of those things where it's unfinished business. I have to consume you, but why not get two for the price of one? The performances in this movie was pretty solid. DeWanda Wise, definitely in my opinion, did a very solid job in the role of Jessica. She plays she's a new stepmother, and she's trying to adjust, life being a new wife and stepmother to two kids. One of them is more like a little child, like a little girl, and the other one is a teenager. And of course the teenager is the one that's giving her the most grief about everything, because I think it's more so the thing, she's upset of what happened between her dad and her mother, because her mother basically ended up in some kind of an asylum of some sort. And you always know, when it comes to situations, being the step parent, the stepchild oftentimes feels like the new parent is replacing them, so they're going to be rebellious. And then if she's a teenage girl, so she's extra rebellious against her, but also comes off as very rude at the same time. I'm gonna be honest with you, if there was any character in this movie that was very unlikable, it definitely had to be the oldest daughter, who I believe her name was Taylor. She was very unlikable. Like, when I'm sitting there watching the movie and hearing some of the stuff that she was saying to Jessica, I was like, she better than me, because man, my backhand would have slipped so hard across her face with some of the stuff that she was doing. Then of course, you had Alice, the little girl. She's very young, she's very naive. She takes on this bear that's named Chauncey to be her imaginary friend, but Chauncey ends up having her do these weird things, like develop this list of all the things that she has to do. But of course, because she's a little girl, it's very easy for this entity to be impressionable on this very young mind, which with the imaginary friend telling her to gather all of these things so he could take her to his happy place, not realizing, unbeknownst to her, that his happy place is not so happy at all. It's basically going into a world of limbo, where you're pretty much stuck there and you're just kind of wandering around and basically being sacrificed to these entities on the other side, so to speak. Kind of think of it as like Stranger Things with the upside down a little bit, going to see Vecna. Well, Chauncey is kind of like the Vecna of this world. The production on this movie was pretty solid, especially more so, I would say, in the third act of the movie, where they start to show the other side of the world and how that looks is very dark. It's very, uninviting. It's very creepy looking. I always say, whenever you have a movie where it's the long hallways, many doors, many mirrors, or those checkered floors, those are always very creepy to in like in an environment to be in, and it's not a place that you want to be in for too long. In my opinion, the third act of this movie, the way that they wrapped it up was very good, and I'll admit it was a plot twist that they had in this movie to the point where I thought the movie was over and it was like, oh wow, they're going to end it like this, but they didn't, and it wasn't a cliche type of thing, and I said, okay, y'all got me with that one. Because I really believe, in my opinion, once everything starts to come to a head and, things start churning out with another particular plot twist, and it's like, okay, now we see where this is headed, such as an instance where Jessica can see Chauncey, but other people cannot see Chauncey. And it's like, okay, now I think we see what it is. This imaginary friend that Alice has is the same one that Jessica had when she was a child, which is why she can see the bear and nobody else can. So I like how they implemented that in there as well. And even at a part where you feel like Jessica, all is lost for her, she perseveres and she fights her way through in order to not only save Alice and also, in the same vein, save Taylor, but also save herself. And it's very rare, especially when it comes to horror movies, that you have characters who do some of the smart things, because a lot of times they'll do some of the dumbest things. But because she was a creative and she was a creator, she was able to really think quick on her feet. And I like that. It's dope that they had a black actress in this particular role. Not saying it would have been better or anything like that if it was an actress of another demographic, but I'm gonna speak for my people when it comes to this. When it comes to horror, they like to do the cliche thing where, a lot of times the black person doesn't make it very far. But in this one, she was resourceful, she was creative, she was thinking quick on her feet, she was figuring stuff out as everything was going along, because she's dealt with this entity before. But it's just that it has been so long since it happened, because she was a little girl. I think she was like 5, I think she said, when it happened. You gotta think now she's a grown adult, most likely in her 30s, maybe almost close to 40, when all of this is happening with her now. So now she's a little bit more skillful when it comes to dealing with this entity known as Chauncey, especially since when the last time she dealt with them, she had the help of her dad to get her out of there. And it's unfortunate what ended up happening with her dad, because in the midst of her dad helping to save her, he ended up losing his mind behind it, because that was the sacrifice of what it was in order for him to save his daughter. But I'm glad that everything ended up turning out the way that it did for Jessica as well as the two girls at the end of the day when it comes to the resolution of this movie. If I had one issue, I would say is that the CGI wasn't the best. Like the CGI that they did for how Chauncey looked as in its real form, and even the CGI with the other little creatures that was inside of the other world, I think the CGI could have been done a little bit better, but I can see why they covered it up in darkness, and that's a trick that a lot of productions do. They know if the CGI is not going to be the best, they have those characters that are CGI'd in very low light, dim, and dark settings to hide the obvious issues that they had in post-production when it comes to creating those type of creatures. The CGI is done well if it plays well in a well-lit area, but if they have to keep everything in dark, because again, most of the creatures in this movie, or the things in this movie, were in low lit settings. If you watch the movie, you'll know exactly what it is that I'm talking about, and you can tell that some of the CGI, that the budget wasn't all the way there for that. But if you was to see that in real life, of course, it would scare the hell out of you. Like Chauncey in its true form is creepy as hell. It's far from being a little teddy bear, I will tell you that. But that was probably one of my biggest issues that I had with the movie, was the CGI. I would say some of the dialogue was in there was a little bit stretched out, especially in the first hour or so. Like they could have cut some of the dialogue down a little bit. But once it got to that third act, after that first plot twist, that's when everything started to become a little bit more interesting for me when it comes to this movie. But that's pretty much all I have to say when it comes to Imaginary. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this down in the comments. Is this a movie that you will go to the theaters and see, or will you wait for it after, I guess you could say, 40 days or however long the window is, and wait for it to come on streaming to check it out? Y'all let me know what y'all think down in the comments, and I'll talk to you in the next one.